Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to Super Kaiju Binge, episode 62. We're getting back on track, and as promised, today's episode is probably going to be a fun one. Excuse me. You read the title right. Today, I will be tackling a review of an installment of the Godzilla franchise that I have been wanting to talk about for quite a long time. Today, I will be tackling the extremely overlooked and extremely underrated and miserably underappreciated installment, probably the most of the entire franchise, with 1998's Godzilla The Animated Series. Yes, indeed. So Godzilla the Animated Series is a very, very special show. It is very near and dear to myself and a lot of other G fans who are aware of this show's existence and whom are fans of this series. So I want to jump right into my personal history. Sorry, my leg itches. Also, pardon my chair. Now growing up, of course. Well, actually, hang on. Let me actually start with the production real quick. Godzilla, this technically it's called Godzilla the Series, but I call it Godzilla the Animated Series, is an American animated television series developed by Jeff Kline and Richard Reynes. The series was produced by Centropolis Television, whom also put out the 1998 Godzilla movie, Toho Studios, Adelaide Productions, Columbia TriStar Television, and was originally aired on Fox Kids in the United States between September 12th, 1998 and April 22nd, 2000, with a total of 2 seasons and 40 episodes. It functions as a sequel to the Roland Emmerich 1998 Godzilla movie, and the series premiere picks up right after the events of the film. So, a little bit of history regarding Godzilla the series. Now, this is not at all, of course, the first time that we've had some kind of animated project in the Godzilla franchise. There was the extremely short Godzilla versus Bambi animated clip. I don't know when that came out, but I do believe it was in the early 70s. Um, Hold on. Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, I don't know when that came out. I think that was made as just a joke, where it's literally just a black and white animated short of a deer just standing there minding its own business, and then a giant reptilian foot comes out of nowhere and steps on on Bambi. Yeah, I don't know when that came out. But of course, the much more well-known first actual series or movie that was involving Godzilla that was animated was, of course, the 1978 Hanna-Barbera animated Godzilla series, the Godzilla Power Hour, which I have seen a fair few episodes of. It lasted 26 episodes back in 1978. Godzilla was voiced by Ted Cassidy, whom also voiced the Incredible Hulk in the Lou Ferrigno Hulk show, and he also played Lurch in the original Addams Family series, amongst a various bunch of other Hanna-Barbera sound effects and Hanna-Barbera voice actors. It's not a bad series necessarily, but no, I will not be reviewing the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla show for Super Kaiju Binge. I don't even know if I would if it was fully available, but the main reason why is because it's not fully available to be viewed. there was a couple volumes of the show with like 4 or 5 episodes released on each disc. But A, those are out of print, but also B, that's not the entire series. There's 26 episodes, not 10 or 12. Yeah, I have seen some of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla show. It's okay. If you like pre-1980s Hanna-Barbera shows, you'll probably get a kick out of it. But also apparently in the mid 80s, Henry G. Saperstein tried to, of AIP Productions, the guy who put out a bunch of American cuts of various Godzilla and other Toho kaiju films throughout the 60s and 70s, approached Toho at some point wanting to make a full-blown animated feature film featuring Godzilla. But this, I believe, was right off the cusp of the Steve Miner 1983 Godzilla script going kaput. So obviously, this never came to be either. I don't know what details surrounded that movie other than it was supposed to be an animated Godzilla movie. So other than that, it's pretty obscure, but still, it's a shame that never came to be. Um, so then finally, following the release of, well, not following actually, when the Godzilla 1998 movie was about to be released and the hype train was going on like crazy, the series showrunner, Jeff Klein and Richard Reynes, they approached Toho saying that they'd like to make this animated series as like a companion piece to the movie. So they got the approval, and the production and creation of this show was kept under extremely tight wraps. Like even some of the um, animators and script writers didn't even know that this was supposed to be specifically a Godzilla show. It was tentatively titled Heat Seekers, and Godzilla himself was initially designed to look kind of like a giant mutated Spinosaurus. But then when they finally got their hands on the actual Godzilla license from Toho, the creators were just like, "Oh, hey guys, surprise! It's actually a Godzilla show." And then, of course, the design was changed and adapted into Godzilla. So the Roland Emmerich movie was released, and again, despite making some money, its critical thrashing just devastated its reputation in the States and in Japan, and especially amongst Godzilla and Kaiju fans. And actually, so there was supposed to be a trilogy of movies that TriStar wanted to produce. The script for the second movie in the series, I don't know what it was called. It was just kind of called Godzilla 2 for a while, where the surviving uh, egg at the end of the 1998 movie, Godzilla would hatch and then tunnel and make his way to Sydney, Australia, or the Australian outback, and would grow and reproduce. And somehow this Godzilla had an atomic breath and was much more immune and resistant to military's weaponry. And it would do battle with a giant species of termite-like insect monsters, along with its brood, which would later be killed by the military, except for one small Godzilla offspring known as the Runt. At the end of the movie, the new Godzilla would kill the queen termite monster and destroy the rest of the termite monsters, and then go into the sunset, into the ocean with its one remaining offspring. I don't know what details entailed the third movie in that series. I don't really think they got that far as script writing is concerned. It's a shame that that series never came to be. I would have liked to see at least that second movie. It would have sounded cool, but it never came to be. But we got this instead. So yeah, despite the critical flopping of the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie, when this series was released, about 4 months later, just under 4 months actually, it actually turned out the pilot episode, which was chopped into a two-parter, um, became the highest rated and highest viewed debut for an animated series in Fox's history at the time. And it would go on for a successful, again, 2 seasons with 40 episodes total, each episode being 22 minutes long, or 23 minutes long. Um, and despite having a good run, when Warner Brothers released Pokemon, which of course was a gargantuan hit, it kind of stole the thunder from every other animated kids show that was going on at the time. So then all the major studios were trying to come up with something that was sort of kind of similar to Pokemon in order to rival them. And Fox's answer to Pokemon was Digimon, of all things. So that is what ultimately ended up killing Godzilla the Animated Series. I don't know if there was a third season planned, but I do know that the main design artist for this show created up to 60 different monsters to be used for the show. And I'm pretty sure quite a few of those went unused as the show went on. So maybe there were like some scraps of ideas for a third season, but obviously never came to be. But I'm not too upset about that because 40 episodes is a pretty solid run, especially, to quote Paper Fines, for a show that was attached to a movie that was so universally bashed and hated. So the fact that we got a 40 episode series as a sequel to a movie that so many people didn't like, and to have it be as successful as it was, is quite miraculous. So jumping into my personal history, when of course I was young, I had a VHS tape of the 1998 Godzilla movie, and there were some advertisements at the beginning of the tape. One was for high definition color film, where it was a bunch of almost naked dudes in like orange, red, blue, and green bodysuits pounding onto a drum, and it was advertising some kind of like color film for, you remember those box cameras where you'd have to wind it up, take photos, and when it was done and over with, it would rewind itself. You could get them out of vending machines, which they use in the 1998 Godzilla movie. Oh my god. Anyway, there was a advertisement for the Animorphs TV series. It was like a 30-second TV spot. But amongst those ads, there was also a very short commercial for Godzilla the Animated Series. And it was very, very short. It was like maybe 15 seconds long. But for some reason, it just never clicked for me as a kid. Wait, there's more? There's more of this Godzilla? So, when I was a little older and when I would get my hands on the TriStar 50th anniversary DVDs for like the Showa Godzilla movies and the Millennium Godzilla movies. Oh, Jackie Boy is here. Just finished my review of Rebirth for next weekend. I actually still have not seen Jurassic World Rebirth. But yes, I am aware that Sam Neill just passed away, so I'm going to have to rectify that pretty soon. Rest in peace. Anyway, yeah, when I would watch the TriStar 50th anniversary DVDs, I would check out the special features, and the main thing that they always had was a big giant collection of trailers for Anaconda, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, of all things. The main teaser trailer for Godzilla Save the Earth on PS2. And there was also a slightly longer commercial for Godzilla the Animated Series. It was the one that had the opening narrator saying, Godzilla the Animated Series, featuring the largest collection of mutated monsters. And that's when it really clicked for me, like, wow, there actually is more to that movie. So I would look on Netflix. This was back when I was still using Netflix's DVD delivery service. May that rest in peace as well. And initially, I was kind of hostile towards it because I was like, oh, God, it's a sequel to the 1998 movie. So what is it? Just a giant lizard running around, running away from monsters this entire time? I was a bit of an asshole kid. So I would be a little disappointed in seeing that there was only 2 discs to rent for this series. And this also was back in the dark days of trying to watch TV shows on DVD, unless it was like a sitcom. This was back in the days where, especially for kids shows, they would just release DVDs that had random select episodes, and there were maybe 4 or 5 a piece. Like SpongeBob did this, Goosebumps did this, uh, Teen Titans did this, Spider-Man the Animated Series did this. Really kind of any kids TV show you can think. Danny Phantom was another one that did this. Any kids show from the late 90s to the early 2000s. Thanks for the share, Jackie boy. And tell me if you remember this too, where studios didn't want to release the entire show onto, or at least like an entire season onto a DVD set. They would just pick random select episodes from throughout the series and just throw them on DVD at random, not giving a shit that it didn't make any sense. So the first one that I reviewed, there was, to my knowledge, 2 DVDs initially made for Godzilla the Animated Series. The first one that I got had the Monster Wars trilogy. And watching this this collection of episodes, I was like, "What is this? Oh my God, Godzilla's fighting monsters. Godzilla has atomic breath. This is awesome. The 1998 movie has been redeemed." By the way, pardon my voice if you can't tell. I did catch a cold, and I'm still trying to get the goddamn thing out of my system. I don't know if it's obvious. Speaking of which, let me bring out the first sponsor of the day. So I would habitually rewatch this DVD again and again and again and again and again until my mom took it away and threw it back in the mail. But then I looked up and discovered that there is a second DVD of Godzilla the Animated Series. So I asked to rent that. So it showed up and it had, let's see, I think also 3 episodes on it. Actually, let's see. Oh, yeah, home media. Oh, I was right. Oh, I know, that was VHS. Oh, no, there was 3. So Columbia TriStar Home Video released 2 separate episode collections on VHS. Trouble Hatches, composed of the 2-part pilot episode, which was actually titled New Family when it first aired, and Monster War, featuring the 3-part episode trilogy of the same name. In 2004 and 2006, respectively, Sony released 9 episodes on DVD spread out onto 3 separate volumes. The Monster Wars trilogy, consisting of the same 3-part episode previously released on the VHS version. Monster Mayhem, which included What Dreams May Come, Bird of Paradise, and Deadlock. This is the second one that I rented. And I never saw this third one, Mutant Madness, which contains Scale, the Twister, and Where Is Thy Sting? In 2006, Sony released the Monster Edition DVD of Godzilla 1998, featuring 3 episodes of the TV series, What Dreams May Come, Monster War Part 1, and Where Is Thy Sting. That is a god-awful selection. Why not the first 2? Or, like, why not, New Family, Monster War Part 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe Where Is Thy Sting? That is a god-awful selection. But in 2014, coming just off of the high of seeing Godzilla 2014 in theaters, which I'll get to this. In 2014, Mill Creek Entertainment released the complete series on DVD in North America, which included the 2 unaired episodes. And on this set, the episodes were released in chronological order, not the broadcast order, which of course I do have. So yeah, coming off of the surprise and high of seeing Godzilla 2014 in theaters, I bought this series when I got my first job working at a small grocery store / convenience store, and this I got with my very first check. And it was a nice time to be a Godzilla fan in 2014. So not only was there a new movie in the franchise, but a previously hardly ever seen installment that didn't have a lot of love finally got its opportunity to be shown to the world. I mean, sure, it's a bare bones basic Mill Creek set, but it's the whole show, and it's put in its proper order. So I'm not going to complain. So when it showed up, I marathoned the first 20 or so episodes of Godzilla the Animated Series. And actually, so beforehand, too, being bored of those first 2 DVD sets that Sony put out, I would then watch a whole bunch of episodes of Godzilla the Animated Series on YouTube of varying quality. I think some of them were VHS recordings. But I would become a big fan of the show through there. But when I got my hands on the DVD set, I would marathon the first 20 to 25 episodes in just a couple days. I was just head over heels in love with this show. Surprisingly, though, I have only seen the entire series, all 40 episodes from beginning to end, maybe about 5 or 6 times. Because I kind of have this thing with shows that I really like where I don't really watch them from beginning to end because I don't want them to end. I do this with Tremors the series. That's probably the biggest example of a show that I love so much, but it's hard for me to watch the whole thing because I just don't want it to end. I know that makes no sense because like you stop at a certain point and it ends there for you, but like it's just like watching the whole thing from beginning to end, it's kind of painful. It also doesn't help that the final episode, the actual final episode of the series, is kind of an underwhelming, bland, basic episode. So that also left a bad taste in my mouth, which we'll talk about that later. But if you remember my top 20 favorite TV shows video that I did back in 2020, maybe, Godzilla the Animated Series ranked in at number 10 or number 9 in my top 20 list. And I would still say that's pretty accurate to this very day. I do consider Godzilla the Animated Series to be one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And I also consider this, like, if somebody was to ask me what I think the number 1 most underrated movie of the entire Godzilla franchise is, I probably would say Godzilla versus Biollante. But if we're just talking about the entire franchise, like including the animated shows, I would definitively say Godzilla the Animated Series is the number 1 most underrated and underappreciated installment of the entire Godzilla franchise. Now, this show does have a fair few collection of fans, and many people whom I've discussed this show with do remember this show fondly and do think it's a worthy entry in the franchise and is a much better interpretation of this version of Godzilla. Well, I defend Zilla 98 as well, Star Master 204, but the Roland Emmerich Godzilla movie is a terrible Godzilla film, as I've stated many times. But this show does redeem that version of Godzilla and redeems that creative choice. And yeah, I still think this show is the most miserably underrated installment. And yeah, like I said, people who have seen the show do generally say that it's a good and an entertaining series. Uh I don't really think there exists any. Oh, I mean, I'm sure there do, but I've never met or heard any negative opinions from all the Godzilla fans that I've discussed this show with. A lot of people generally do seem to like it, and of course, myself included. So now, with this being a TV show, you know what comes next. I am going to have to go through some kind of plot synopsis over the course of the show. Now, to spare you, I'm not going to read the plot of all 40 episodes. That would make this go on for 4 hours. So I am going to read a plot synopsis of the show. And I am going to read the plots of some select episodes. But again, still bear with me. I know that this is why I don't review more TV shows, is purely figuring out plots. Because I like to talk about a show that people are aware of, but for those who haven't seen the show or like haven't finished the entire show that I'm talking about, I'd like to have there be a general knowledge, description, and idea of how the show works and how the show goes along. So again, just bear with me. The series follows the humanitarian, environmental, or ecological in the episode Area 51 analysis team, or HEAT for short, a research team led by Dr. Nick Tatopoulos, in this series voiced by Ian Ziering. I hate Ian. As they battle giant mutant monsters that frequently appear in the wake of the events depicted in the 1998 Godzilla film. Dr. Tatopoulos accidentally discovers an egg that survived the aerial bombardment before it hatches, in a minor change from the ending in the 1998 movie. The creature hatches after Nick stumbles onto him covered in amniotic fluid, and he assumes him to be his parent, effectively imprinting on him. Subsequently, Dr. Tatopoulos and his associates form a research team investigating strange occurrences and defending mankind from dangerous mutations. Godzilla, the only hatchling of his species to survive in the movie, imprints on Nick and becomes the main weapon summoned against the other mutations encountered by the human characters. Pardon Meadow, she just got home. The series also introduces two new characters, Monique Dupré, a French secret agent assigned by Philippe Rocher from the 1998 movie to keep an eye on Godzilla and Heat, and Randy Hernandez, an intern of Nick's who specializes in computer hacking. We'll talk about the characters later. But now let's get to the show. I am going to go over New Family Parts 1 and 2. Because when it was aired both as a combined 40-something minute pilot, and then in later syndication, it was chopped into 2 halves. While scouring the sewers of New York, Nick Tatopoulos discovers one of Godzilla's eggs has survived. The hatchling that emerges escapes, and by the time the team finds him again, he has grown into a large subadult. Godzilla recognizes Nick's scent and imprints on him as his parent. As the team tries to study the new Godzilla, the U.S. military, responding to a series of disappearances in Jamaica, attack and seemingly kill Godzilla. But in New Family Part 2, with Godzilla seemingly dead, the team journey to Jamaica to help the U.S. military investigate the ongoing disappearances in Jamaica. The team discover that a group of giant squids and a hideous mutant crustacean, Crustaceous Rex, are responsible, and Godzilla, who had survived the military attack, arrives to fight the beast off. Nick must now battle to help Major Hicks defeat C-Rex and then convince him that Godzilla is more useful alive than dead. That's episodes 1 and 2. Let's see. I'll go for this one. I don't like this one very much, but whatever. Episode 5, The Winter of Our Discontent. After Godzilla battles robotic insects, the team encounter their creator, Cameron Winter, a powerful technology mogul and an old rival of Nick's from college. He wants Heat to work with him, but Nick refuses, suspecting his old enemy has ulterior motives. But can he find out what they are before Winter's schemes have fatal consequences for Godzilla? Episode 7, What Dreams May Come. When a strange electrical creature known as the Crackler attacks seemingly random locations in Manhattan, the team investigate. But the Crackler is not behaving like the mutations Heat have fought before, and what is its connection to mild-mannered insomniac Sydney Walker. Episode 8, Leviathan. The team are called to help a rescue mission for xenobiologist Alexander Prelorin, voiced by Kenneth Mars, who disappeared while on a mission to explore the Leviathan, an alien spacecraft buried at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean for 65 million years. But once they go down there, the team discovers that the ship's alien crew is very much alive, and they have plans for Earth. Episode 9, Hive. He investigates the tropical island of Santa Marta in the wake of a devastating volcanic eruption. But what they find on the island is that due to irradiated lava, a hideously mutated ecosystem has developed, including carnivorous plants and gigantic bees. As the volcano erupts again and Godzilla confronts the bee's queen, the team must find a way to escape the island alive. Episode 10, Bird of Paradise. When villages in Mexico are attacked by a strange winged creature, an ornithologist and Elsie's old fiancé, Lawrence Cohen, voiced by Tate Donovan, calls Heat for help. They quickly discover the beast is Quetzalcoatl, an evolutionary hybrid of bird and dinosaur capable of breathing fire and protected by impenetrable feathers. A big homage to the movie Q the Winged Serpent, as we'll discuss later. The team must find a way to stop the creature, but matters worsen when Quetzalcoatl takes Elsie to feed its hungry young. Monster Wars Part 1, Episode 12. As tension threatens to break up the Heat team for good, major problems arise. A giant bat is terrorizing the countryside of Nigeria. The U.S. military has dredged the Leviathan ship from the bottom of the Pacific. And worst of all, the aliens are back with an army of mutations under their control and plans to conquer Earth. Episode 13, Monster Wars Part 2. From their secret base on Isle del Diablo, the aliens assemble their forces. Heat desperately fights to resist, but are easily defeated. Once captured and brought to the aliens, they are told that the mutation army including a brainwashed Godzilla, will be used to attack major cities across the world in preparation for a full-scale invasion of Earth. At its head marches the alien's ultimate weapon, Cyber Godzilla, a reborn cyborg version of the first Godzilla. In Monster Wars Part 3, as the aliens and their mutation allies attack Earth, Heat escapes captivity. They battle to defeat the alien onslaught and free the mutations from their control to help humanity fight back and save the planet from conquest. Oh, I see. Episode 7, Bug Out. Godzilla is throwing infantile tantrums, and Heat are growing worried about their ability to control him. When Audrey lets this slip on live TV, despite being told in confidence by Nick, their relationship looks set to be torn apart. Yes, Audrey returning from the 1998 movie. I don't think she's voiced by the same actress, though. Meanwhile, when called in to investigate extensive deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, they discover that a mutant termite colony is devouring the forest at an alarming rate. Heat must find a way to destroy the voracious insects before they devour the entire rainforest. This kind of sounds like they may have took some inspiration from that Godzilla 2 script that never got made. Episode 19, An Early Frost. When Godzilla is accused of attacking New York, the military call in Heat to help contain him. But Philippe Rocher has returned from France with orders to terminate Godzilla. However, Heat discovers the real culprit is a mutation called the Chameleon, genetically engineered by Cameron Winter, whom has somehow escaped from jail following the events of the Winter of Our Discontent, to frame Godzilla. Can they stop Winter and reveal the truth before it is too late? Episode 20, Juggernaut. The technosentient, an alien piece of technology, falls to Earth and begins to bond with all manner of human technology, growing to gargantuan proportions. Worst of all, it taps into the internet and learns of the location of humanity's weapons of mass destruction. The team and Godzilla must find a way to stop the technosentient before it takes control of an arsenal of nuclear missiles. And this one does sound very similar to the Godzilla vs. Berserk script, the big predecessor to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. That script still would have made a cool movie. But this is fairly close to what that would have entailed. And this is one of my favorite episodes. So, let's see. Episode 23, Cache of the Titans. In the middle of an attack on Heat headquarters by a giant water beetle, the team is shocked to find Godzilla is not responding to their distress call. After fending off the beetle, the team discovers that the billionaire Maximilian Spiel, voiced by Mr. Krabs, Clancy Brown, that's 2 SpongeBob actors that's in this show. More on that later. Is hosting a monster fighting ring with Godzilla as his new main attraction. I'm going to whip you. Now with Audrey, an animal not voiced by Hank Azaria, voiced by Joe Pantalacalalia instead. I don't know what the hell his name is. Joe Pantalano or something. The team must save Godzilla from a brutal fight to the death against other mutations. Excuse me. Episode 24, Scale, told in a documentary style and from the point of view of cameras, either Animal's video camera or Monster Island's security cameras. The Heat team are called to Miami to deal with Skeetera, a giant mutant female mosquito. That sounds like a Showa era type thing. When they come under attack from Scale, servants of creatures arriving late to Earth, an eco-terrorist group led by Alexandra Springer, voiced by Reagan from The Exorcist, Linda Blair, who believe that mutations are the next stage of evolution. After capturing the rampaging insect, Heat transports Skeetera to Monster Island so she can be studied by the U.S. military. But unknown to them, they have unwanted guests. Animal and Audrey have stowed away on board the Heat Seeker, the Heat team's boat that they use to drive all around the world, hoping for a good story, and Scale has tracked them to Monster Island. When the terrorists take over Monster Island with plans to release the mutations that are already held there, the only hope lies in the combined forces of Godzilla, Heat, Major Hicks and his troops, and Audrey and Animal. Episode 28, while fighting a giant mutant bacteria named the Bacillus, Godzilla is infected by it along with Mendel and are left fighting for their lives. While Elsie and Randy create an antibiotic to weaken the bacterium, Nick and Monique must enter Godzilla's body and destroy the infection at its source before Godzilla and Mendel die. Let's see. Excuse me, sorry. My nose itches. Episode 34, Where is Thy Sting? While tracking Godzilla to Fort Armstrong, New Mexico, the team discovers that a gigantic mutant scorpion called Tse-Go by the locals is on the rampage. But when they try to contain the mutation, they come under fire from the U.S. military under the command of Colonel Charles Tarrington, voiced by Michael Chiklis. Really? That Michael Chiklis? Oh. An old friend of Hicks who is out to destroy both Tse-Go and Godzilla. When he discovered Tse-Go was created by the Army's First Wave program, and that Tarrington is planning to use the creature's offspring, codenamed the Second Wave, as bioweapons, he and Hicks must convince Tarrington to abort the mission when the Scorpions get out of control. Godzilla protects Major Hicks and Colonel Tarrington by stepping in front of them and being sprayed with the Scorpion's venomous acid. Tarrington then orders Godzilla to be killed, and Nick is aghast, pointing out that Godzilla took a hit for him. Last couple episodes. Cameron Winter, his final appearance in the series, springs Dale, Bill, and Hank from the previous episode. What was it? I think it was Cat and Mouse. Yeah, Cat and Mouse. It was a pretty uninteresting filler episode. You're not missing much. Which is it? Oh yeah, here we go. The redneck hunters from Cat and Mouse from jail and uses them to pilot the Lizard Slayers, 3 extremely well-armed battle mechas, a giant robot, a tank, and a jet plane, programmed with one mission: to destroy Godzilla. When Cameron takes control of Heat's computer systems to stop them from intervening, Nick and the others must get rid of Cameron and then find a way to save Godzilla from the 3 hunters. This is the final episode. The Deep Tourist Trap, episode 40. This one's lame. The Deep Dweller, a huge mutant frogfish, begins to attack boats and fishing ships off the coast of New Jersey. Heat must help Godzilla drive the creature back to deeper waters and also deal with the interference of the sleazy and obnoxious tour promoter Milo Sanders, voiced by Stuart Pankin, who runs a mutation boat tour called the Manhattan Mutant Line and hopes to make even more money by getting good footage of Godzilla, and a little nod and homage to Audrey's bitch move in the movie. And that was the final episode of the series. Yeah, that's all the episodes that I'm gonna. The series doesn't have a finale, which I'll talk about that later. But those are some of the more important episodes of the series, and just a couple random highlights that I personally like that I threw in. So, well, how about this plot? And like, how about this premise? Well, it actually is my first pro. I really, really dig the premise of this series. This is the closest that we will ever get to a full-blown tokusatsu style series that has Godzilla in it. Something like Ultraman or Kamen Rider or Super Sentai. A Japanese superhero show that, is very formulaic, is very freak of the week. The main character or title character is the main focus and the main means that is used to destroy the various monsters of the week and the various like giant aliens, giant monsters, giant robots that attack and disrupt the world. And with that format, that's actually exactly what this show is. It just so happens to be animated, and it's a sequel to a movie that not a whole lot of people like. But, I've been saying for years, so many various Toho monster movies or Toho sci-fi films could have been made into good tokusatsu style TV shows. Like Atragon could have been made into a good series. Space Amoeba could have been an interesting series. War of the Gargantuas could have been made into a TV series. And I do think Godzilla could have been made into a series. And you could also argue that the 70s Godzilla movies, especially Godzilla vs. Gigan onward, those are essentially theatrically released feature-length episodes of like a Ultraman style Godzilla TV show, where it's just various monsters coming in trying to destroy the world, and Godzilla's the main big bad superhero that fights them off and defeats them. And I've always wanted to see that premise made into a thing with Godzilla, and yeah, this pretty much is the only example of that we're ever going to get, unfortunately, at least for now. And you know what? I'll take it. I love it. Now, yeah, it is very similar to something like Ultraman or Kamen Rider. I'm just going to compare it more so like Ultra. Actually, now that I think about it, it pretty much is exactly like an Ultraman series. Heat stands in for the Science Patrol, a team of specially like special agents essentially, or very intelligent scientists in their field that are either sometimes hired by a private organization or they're hired by the military to go investigate various occurrences all throughout the world, fighting monsters and using Godzilla as their big gun essentially. Instead of a member of the team transforming into the title hero, they just call in Godzilla and use them as the big weapon or big gun essentially to either kill, defeat, or thwart the giant monster. It is very similar to the format of an Ultraman show, especially a Showa era Ultraman show. Um, and overall, this series does kind of have a Showa era feel, which I really dig. I'm actually digging the Showa Godzilla series right now, so that's extra brownie points in my corner. Um, not much else to say about that premise, but yeah, I really dig it. Um, I like that we do a lot of hopping all over the world, different locations, different situations, different monsters, and there's a lot of variety in this show too. It's not just the same kind of monster that Godzilla fights again and again and again throughout the series. Some Showa Ultraman shows are guilty of doing that. Yeah, there's tons of variety. There's tons of different situations that the Heat team and Godzilla get themselves into. There's a ton of different monsters that they have to go up against. It's all very well done. It's very creative, very entertaining, lots of fun, and very enjoyable. So what more could you ask for? So yeah, that's pro number one. I really dig the premise. I love it. Pro number two, this is kind of a minor one, but this movie does have a pretty decent music score. The music score was done by a guy named Jim Latham. I don't know what else he may have worked on. But a lot of fans of this series do really dig the opening intro theme. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, I love that intro. It's really, really good. They kind of reuse a lot of that same, or they, well, yeah, they do use some of that same music, but it's pitched down and slowed down throughout various monster fights and epic moments throughout various episodes. But there's not a whole lot to say about the music. Sometimes it's suspenseful when there's a more suspenseful episode, or it's more bombastic and action packed whenever there's a monster fight, or it's more like awe-inspiring when a giant monster is revealed. Not much to say about the music, but I do like it. Jim Latham did a good job. None of the music from the 1998 movie is used in this series, but it somehow still works. Like maybe there's a couple tracks here and there that maybe sound a bit similar to a couple music cues that were used in the movie. So I do think that is a bit of a subtle way that Jim Latham was trying to like connect this show to the movie, giving it some similar sounding music to at least remind you, oh, that kind of sounds like the same music from the 1998 movie. So I do like that. But yeah, it's not a bad score. It's a little unremarkable, I would say, but I do like the music for this show. Pro number three is this show, excuse me, not movie, show, has a good cast of human characters. Um, the main cast, the Heat team, we have, of course, Dr. Nick Tatopoulos, voiced by Ian Ziering, the leader of Heat and the adopted father of Godzilla. He fiercely protects Godzilla and other mutations from both foreign and domestic governments. And of course, Ian Ziering takes over the role from film actor Matthew Broderick. Uh, Tatopoulos is quite different in this show than he was portrayed in the movie. In the movie, we talked about Totopoulos in my review that I did back in 2023. And yeah, he's very different. There, he's kind of quiet. He's a bit reserved. He's a bit nerdy and is just more comfortable with being a cog in the machine than the leader of the pack. He's kind of the exact opposite. He's a lot more confident. He's a lot more vocal. He's a lot more aggressive and fierce. And he's very no nonsense and a lot more badass than he was in the 1998 movie. And while it's not consistent, it does work for Nick's character in this show. And he's very likable. You buy his bond with Godzilla. You buy his chemistry with the rest of the Heat team. Ian Ziering, of course, does a really good job voicing him. I don't really know of anything else that Ian Ziering has done. Oh, he was from the show Beverly Hills 90210. Oh boy. He also voices Harry Osborn in Spider-Man: The New Animated Series, which I think is a very underrated show, among various other things. He was also in the Sharknado movies, of all things. Then we have Dr. Elsie Chapman, voiced by Charity James, one of the original members of Nick's team, a sarcastic and cynical paleobiologist who specializes in studying the behavior of Godzilla and other mutations. She also has the tendency to be jealous of Audrey around Nick, leading the two women to snark at each other. Although there's other episodes where Elsie has a romantic interest in Dr. Mendel Craven. Charity James takes over the role from film actress Vicki Lewis. I like Elsie. She's a good second in command for the team. Her snarkiness and sarcasticness is a source of a lot of this show's humor. She's got some good quips. She's got some good zingers that she throws at Nick or Randy or Monique or Audrey. And she's kind of the type of person that both says the wrong thing at the wrong time, but also the right thing at the wrong time. Like some of her one-liners and some of her snarky comments, they do land, but they also don't land. And they also land at an inopportune moment. And she too is pretty fiercely loyal to Godzilla and both also to Totopoulos. Yeah, I like Elsie. She might be my favorite character of the show. Then we have Dr. Mendel Craven, voiced by Malcolm Danare, who does reprise his role from the movie. He was the dude who was sneezing the entire time in the movie. Sorry, summer cold. The team's engineer and chemist. He is slightly cowardly, as his last name implies, and prone to numerous strong allergies, but is often resourceful. He is also enamored of Elsie, which is somewhat reciprocated throughout the show, though again, it's kind of inconsistent. Although initially fearful of Godzilla, over the course of the series, he comes to trust the monster as an ally. Dr. Craven is the main source of one of two main sources of comedic relief for this series. A lot of times he's kind of a whiner. He's like, oh, I don't want to go to Costa Rica. It's hot. I'm allergic to bugs, and I'm allergic to pollen, and I'm allergic to the sun. I don't want to get a sunburn. Blah, 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 blah. So many situations throughout the show. He's just kind of a wiener. But he does have moments where he pulls through and is pretty badass. And yeah, he is quite resourceful. A lot of times he's the one who comes up with a deus ex machina to either defeat the enemy monster or save Godzilla in some way. But he is also likable and he is also funny. And the next character Nigel, voiced by Tom Kenny. SpongeBob, short for Next Millennium Intelligence Gathering Electronic Liaison, is an analysis robot created by Mendel and oftentimes reprogrammed by Randy to have various quirky voices, from a Texas cowboy to a Shakespearean actor. A running gag on the show is that he is damaged or destroyed in almost every episode, presumably to be rebuilt or replaced later. Yeah, Nigel is both a tool but also kind of a character, and yes, a yellow robot voiced by the guy who voices a yellow sponge. And now I didn't know it at the time, but once I recognized the voice of SpongeBob, and then I watched this show at some point later on down the line, I instantly recognized Tom Kenny's voice. And I was like, why is SpongeBob in a fucking Godzilla show? And Tom Kenny does a good job voicing Nigel too. Really, all the characters in this show do a good job voicing their characters. I don't really think there's any bad voice acting anywhere, in my opinion. But Nigel is another source of a lot of this show's humor. And yeah, not every episode Nigel gets destroyed. Hell, Nigel doesn't even show up in every episode. But there are some pretty funny deaths, but we'll talk about that a little later. Pardon Roman. Pardon Meadow coughing. Oh wait, no, back to the cast. I got two more cast members here. We have Randy Hernandez, voiced by Oh, is that who she is? Huh. Oh, that was Maria Patillo. Ugh. Okay, yeah, Randy Hernandez, voiced by Reno Romano, is a Canadian actor. Oh, he's voiced both Batman and Spider-Man in various shows. An intern and expert hacker working under Nick, and is Godzilla's constant supporter like Nick. Talented in various fields of technology, but extremely lazy, sarcastic, and somewhat Sonic. What the hell is that? Oh, laconic. Oh, excuse me. A person. Oh, okay. Of a person's speech or style of writing using very few words. Oh, so like one word answers. He usually annoys Mendel by programming Nigel with various different personalities, all the while sharing a tight brotherly rival turned friendship with Mendel. Randy has a huge hard on for Monique, but is often rebutted when he attempts to court her, leading into Monique Dupre, voiced by Bridget Bacot, or Baco. I think Bacot. Yeah, probably Bacot. A French agent of the DGSE, the Directorate General for External Security, which is France's foreign intelligence agency, essentially France CIA, specializing in hand-to-hand combat and infiltration. She was originally sent to have Godzilla killed, but becomes a member of Heat after being assigned to supervise Godzilla indefinitely. She is very talented with various martial arts, espionage, and marksmanship. Randy is also a very likable character. He's the tech guy, he's the tech geek, but he is also a wannabe badass, and he is also another source of comedic relief for this show. But he's kind of a simple character, like how he's described in this description. He stays that way for the entire show, but he's entertaining and endearing enough that it never gets old. And Monique is the badass of the show, and how she is described in here, also she stays that way for the entire show. But like Randy, she is enjoyable and likable enough that it never becomes an issue. We do have some, excuse me, supporting characters throughout the show. Major Anthony Hicks, also voiced by, or not also, but voiced by Kevin Dunn, the same guy who played him in the movie, the commanding officer of the Sandy Point military base in New York, who played a key role in the first Godzilla's death. Though he is at first skeptical of the second Godzilla, over time he develops a soft spot for the creature, whom he views as a hero. At times, seeing him clash with Nick and how he wants to destroy or take care of the various monsters that shows up is just like how he is in the movie. It's shoot first, shoot again, and then never ask any questions. And numerous time again, Nick has to step in and say, that's not going to work. 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 But he is also an enjoyable character. And it is nice that they got the same voice actor or the same actor to reprise his role. We have Audrey Timmons, this time voiced by Paget Brewster, Nick's college sweetheart and somewhat untrustworthy girlfriend, whose career as a reporter often leads the two into conflict as seen in the film. Yet despite that, she is always there for Nick whenever it involves his life and Godzilla's life. Brewster takes over the role from film actress Maria Patillo from the movie. Victor Animal Pilati returns from the movie, voiced by Joe Pantoliano. Okay. You know who Joe Pant, as he's also referred to as, voices Animal in this show. The Channel 8 News cameraman and Audrey's sarcastic working partner, who is always willing to help her film Godzilla and the other mutations alongside helping the Heat team. He is also a happily married man and supportive of Nick and Audrey's relationship. Pantoliano takes over the role from film actor Hank Azaria. Hank Azaria is on The Simpsons? Oh, he voices comic book guy, amongst other characters. So I'm just gonna stop there. Yeah, this show does have a very good cast, and all the characters that it has does add themselves into. I know. Be safe. I love you. Yeah, that one aspect of all these characters returning lends itself into another one of my pros, but this show does have a good cast. All the chemistry is really solid. All the dialogue and all of the jokes and quirks and chemistry, as I said, between all the characters is really good, really solid, very endearing, very entertaining. Some of the characters really don't change as the show goes on, but that's okay. And some of them do in some ways, and that's also okay. Yeah, this show has a really good cast. Couldn't have asked for anything more. Oh yeah, we almost got the toy line from this show back in the day. Yeah, there was a big toy line that was attached to this show that never got released for some reason. I have no clue why. I think Monster Island Buddies did an episode on that, so maybe he answered it there. Hold that thought, guys. I gotta go use the restroom. So give me just a minute. Oh man, this is not the most ideal. Oh. Yes, I know my doors are very squeaky. And this is why I need a guest sometimes. Okay. Excuse me. Pardon the interruption. Um. So yeah, this show has a great cast. Oh, I may as well talk about this. The fact that the cast is so good, I think, is one of the biggest aspects that leads itself into this. This one also might be a bit minor, but pro number 4 is I like the use of continuity. Not just well, no, like as a sequel, it functions very well as a continuation of the 1998 movie. All the main characters from the movie bleed into the show. There are a lot of callbacks to the events of the movie, and also as the show goes on, there are references to previous events that occurred in the show. And also, some of the characters, like, no, not all the important ones, but the fact that they actually tried to get more than one or two actors from the first movie to reprise their roles in this series is admirable and quite appreciated. Mayor Ebert, also voiced by Michael Lerner from the movie, makes a couple appearances throughout the show. I think he shows up in like 4 episodes at the very most in the show. But yeah, the fact they got the actor from the movie to voice his character is also quite appreciated. Um, and that might be a very strange thing to praise in a show, but with this being a kids show, a lot of times the episodes are made to be very isolated and standalone, which is good and bad. But I like monster of the week, freak of the week type stuff where the episodes can be standalone and this show could have been aired out of order, or various other shows could have been aired out of order. But the like the structure and routine of the show is, good and understandable enough to jump in at any point. But I also am okay with there being various events that go throughout the show that kind of evolve the characters and progress them in small ways. And also, it's appreciated that as these events, these main event level type things occur in the show, it's nice that there is an acknowledgement of previous events in the series. Like, the Leviathan storyline, as I call it, the first episode that features the Leviathan aliens, of course, gets sequel episodes with the Monster Wars trilogy. And the episode Scale kind of acts as an epilogue type episode because Scale takes place on Monster Island. And at the end of Monster Wars Part 3, Monster Island had been created as an idea to store all the various monsters and mutations on a secluded habitat away from the rest of the world, but not trying to kill them. It's kind of an idea that was done in the Showa era Godzilla series. And the fact that Scale makes acknowledgments to the events of the Monster Wars trilogy is quite appreciated. It does show that the writers and showrunners were paying attention to the show's continuity and trying to make some kind of progression as the show went on. And I like that. That's much appreciated. Oh, hi, Nikita. Jackie Boy says Bear says hi. Hello. But yeah, I like the use of continuity in this show. It's quite good. Pro number 5 is there are some cool Toho Easter eggs. In the intro to the series, there's a bunch of monsters that Godzilla goes up against. One's like a giant spider, one's some kind of giant mutated bat type thing. There's like a giant snake and some other kind of giant insect monster. And all of these are references to other Toho kaiju. Like one's a reference to Gigan, one's a reference to Manda, one's a reference to Kumonga. Sadly, those monsters don't actually appear in the show, but it is nice that they're throwing in some kind of acknowledgement to the Toho monsters. And there's another episode too. I think it's called Competition, maybe. Oh yeah, episode 15, Competition. A trip to Japan to investigate a number of mysterious disappearances leads to a battle of wills between Heat and the Japanese military, who perceive Godzilla to be a threat. However, the real threat is revealed to be an Ophidiophobic's nightmare, someone who's afraid of snakes. A mutant king cobra. Things lead to a climactic showdown in Tokyo between the king cobra and Godzilla. This episode is full of references to the Japanese side of the Godzilla franchise. Like, for starters, it takes place in Japan. They called Godzilla Gojira several times in this episode. There is the appearance of a giant Yeti slash ape type creature, which is a reference to King Kong. And it also fights Godzilla, so it's a slight reference to King Kong versus Godzilla. But then we find out that the giant ape is actually a robot that has like synthetic flesh. So it's kind of both a reference to also Mechanicong, as well as maybe a reference to that unused Godzilla versus Mechanicong script that became Godzilla versus King Ghidorah in 91. And also the creator of said giant robot is named Dr. Ifukube, a reference to the music composer Akira Ifukube for various Godzilla movies. Yeah. All these references and nods and Easter eggs are very much appreciated. Like, fans of the Japanese side, they'll see them, they'll point, they'll be like, hey, I know that reference. It's cool. You can tell that the creators of this show were fans. Another one, too, is that the plot of the Monster Wars trilogy, well, it kind of is, it's kind of a dual reference to really any alien invasion plot line that we saw from the Showa series. Well, actually, I think the structure of the show overall, it does feel very much like the Showa series. Hopping all over the world, fighting Godzilla, fighting various monsters, and eventually creating some kind of monster island, as was coined in the Showa Godzilla series. Yeah, it feels very Showa-esque. But the plot of the Monster Wars trilogy feels like any alien invasion plot from the Showa Godzilla series, specifically too when all the monsters go on rampages all over the world attacking major cities. It feels like under aliens' control, and especially with Godzilla himself not attacking New York City, but he actually attacks Washington, D.C. It feels like a huge homage to Destroy All Monsters specifically. Sadly, that title is not used in the episode, but it does feel very much like that movie. And also, too, the aliens having a mechanical version of Godzilla at their disposal, that kind of does feel like an homage to the simian aliens from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla in 1974. So, like I said, all of these Easter eggs and winks and nods and references are much appreciated. If you're a fan of the Godzilla franchise, you can pick up on these references and you can appreciate them just as much as I do. And I also do appreciate, like I said, that it's very obvious that the creators of this series were obviously Godzilla fans. They weren't just people who were hired to work on the show and they ended up hating it and they just made it out of spite. This was made by loving fans making loving tributes, and like kind of like what Michael Dougherty was doing with Godzilla King of the Monsters, just them saying, yeah, we're fans too. I like this stuff too. So let me give you good stuff for you to enjoy. Well, thank you. I'll gladly take that. I'll be very happy. Pro number 6. I don't have much to say about this, but the animation overall for this show is quite solid. It's not exactly high budget, but and it's a kids show, so of course it's not going to have the biggest budget that you can imagine, but it is competently animated. The movements are all smooth. The monsters and Godzilla and various creatures all look really good. The fight scenes are well animated. The monster action is well animated. Sometimes the mouth movement for all the characters is a little janky, but I mean, you can name several dozen hundred shows where the movement for the mouth, if they're animated, is a little janky. So I don't really think that's a big issue towards this show. But yeah, I'm not an animation expert. This show is also very colorful. There's lots of blues and reds and oranges and yellows all throughout the show. It is a very colorful and very varied and um, variable, for lack of a better term, show. So yeah, I'm not an animation expert. The show is well animated for the most part. It's smooth, it's clean, it's crisp for the most part. Yeah, it's good. Not how much to say on that part. Pro number 7, I believe. One, two, three, four, 5, 6. Yeah, 7 is Godzilla or Godzilla Jr., however you want to call him. I've heard him uh, go by both names. In the show, he's just called Godzilla, but I think his official Toho name is Godzilla Jr. Of all the offspring or child Godzillas, this is probably the most successful and the most badass. Um, and yeah, I really like Godzilla in this show. Character wise, there's really not much to say about Godzilla. He's a big guard dog, essentially, and he is a big gun. He is fiercely protective over Nick, his adopted father, which that bond and that friendship is very believable, and it's very kind of sweet and enjoyable and touching, not in a nasty way. Shut up. Um, but just watching him as being a big giant badass giant monster, he's very enjoyable. Unlike the movie version, this Godzilla is quite durable to conventional and extraterrestrial weaponry. And so he doesn't die when he's shot by missiles. When he was a juvenile at the end of New Family Part 1, you did see Godzilla get shot with a couple missiles and he had like blood on his neck. But I chalk that up to him being a juvenile, so I'm okay with that. But once he's fully grown, he stays that way for the rest of the series, duh. And he is very durable and fairly immune to conventional weaponry. And he takes a beating from a lot of monsters as the show goes on, and nary a scratch. Only a couple times had Godzilla ever actually been hurt by various monsters. One was he got stung by the queen giant bee. Like, she could shoot stingers, and they stuck into his skin all over his face and neck. But there was no blood being drawn. Let's see. Excuse me. There is another insect monster in the episode Metamorphosis that could shoot out barbed stingers that also got over Godzilla's face and his neck and his chest. Again, there's no blood, but they did pierce his skin and caused him a lot of pain. And the most notable example of Godzilla actually getting hurt is in the episode Where Is Thy Sting, where he's fighting a giant scorpion. And at one point, the scorpion does successfully pierce his hide and is able to sting him and inject him with poison. And specifically, to quote Wikizilla when they did their kaiju profile, Godzilla's pretty tough and he's pretty durable and pretty resistant to a lot of attacks. But poisoning and infection is the main thing that has actually put Godzilla on his back foot various times in this show. He was poisoned by the giant scorpion and Where Is Thy Sting, and he was also infected with the bacillus bacteria when the giant, it's literally a giant germ. It sticks out this barbed proboscis and stabs and cuts into Godzilla's flesh and gives him a nasty bacterial infection. Um, But still, yeah, Godzilla's badass. I like his design, of course. It's very similar to how Godzilla looked in the movie. Um, Around the same size, yeah, roughly the same size, same length. But there's the added benefit of Godzilla actually having an atomic breath, which is really nice and very cool and very appreciated. It actually, I know it sounds really stupid, but I mean, like, this is Godzilla. Aside from his immunity to conventional weaponry and his roar, which they do retain the same roar, it sounds slightly different. Like, it sounds a little less echoey, but it is the same kind of roar that they use for Godzilla in the movie. But you can't take away Godzilla's immunity to conventional weaponry, and you can't take away his atomic breath. Well, they did that for the movie, but they gave it right back to Godzilla in this show, and it makes him a very worthy entry in the Godzilla species. Um, and Godzilla does fight monsters pretty well in a pretty entertaining fashion. A lot of times he's pretty tooth and nail, but he does also use his atomic breath effectively, either to shoot down his foes, start fires to corner his foes, or just to outright incinerate. Usually it's bugs that he kills. Godzilla doesn't kill a lot of his, like, full-blown kill his foes a lot in this show. Also, like the Showa Godzilla series, but when he does actually kill his foes, he just sets them ablaze and burns them to ash. Very entertaining. Very well done. I love Godzilla in this show. He's badass. He's a lot of fun to watch. His personality is simple, but it's well done. And Godzilla actually does feel like he has a personality in this show. His bond with Nick is very believable and very touching and sweet. Um, he's like a big, giant, loyal guard dog. Couldn't have asked for more. Yeah, Godzilla's awesome in this show. Pro number 8 is that there is a good variety of monsters all throughout this show. I'm just going to list out. I know I kind of talked about them, talked about the episodes, but I'm going to, like, just name off some random monsters. Like in New Family Parts 1 and 2, there's Crustaceous Rex, a two-legged crab squid hybrid monster. Okay, it looks cool. The episode DOA, where there's literally a giant worm, like a giant mutant worm. That's kind of a reference to the graboids from Tremors. Talking Trash is kind of lame. It's just a bunch of giant rats. The Winter of Our Discontent's kind of lame too. Wait a minute. Oh no, why Talking Trash? Talking Trash has a giant blob of nanotech petroleum eating microbes that can shapeshift and morph itself to defend itself and attack Godzilla, that eats garbage and oil. Cat and Mouse is the lame one. That has just giant rats. It's kind of stupid. What Dreams May Come. The Crackler is some kind of weird looking monster that has long, lanky arms, a kind of crab or alien like skinny mouth. It has 6 limbs, has electromagnetic abilities, and is made up purely of electromagnetic energy. So it's like a construct or a physical embodiment of electromagnetic energy. Okay, that's original and it's cool. Hive has giant bees. Bird of Paradise has a giant bird dinosaur hybrid that breathes fire. Excuse me. Competition has a giant king cobra and a giant robotic ape. Freeze has giant Arctic moles. Bug Out has giant termites. Website has giant spiders. Juggernaut has a techno sentient alien that absorbs machines and electronics in order to get bigger. The episode Trust No One has a creature that's made out of pure DNA that can mimic anything it touches. A la John Carpenter's The Thing. Another one of my favorite episodes. Protector has a giant sphinx-like monster that is a giant oil-consuming metal Egyptian panther god thing that also breathes fire. That's original, and it's cool. The episode Freak Show, the main monster of that is Medusa, a giant sea anemone that sucks out water and electrolytes. That's original. What a long, strange trip it's been. The giant bacillus. It's literally a giant mutant bacteria. Wedding Bells Blue, a giant mutant manta ray that fires out freezing breath. Yeah, there's a lot of monsters that have a lot of weird designs, weird powers that go on various rampages throughout this show and attack people and cause destruction. And most of them are pretty cool. There's a couple crappy ones, as is the case. And, that opinion is subjective. That's also another way that this show is kind of similar to something like Ultraman, especially the Showa Ultraman series. Sometimes the monsters are cool, and other times they're kind of lame. But I would say for the most part that this show does have more cool monsters than crappy ones. But we'll talk about that later. Excuse me. And speaking of which, so there's a great variety of monsters, and that leads to a lot of fun monster action, which is pro number 8. Yeah, the monster action's a lot of fun. Seeing all these various mutations and monsters go on rampages throughout the show is very entertaining. There's lots of great city destruction scenes. There's lots of good. You don't see humans really get hurt, but there's a lot of monsters that attack humans that's fairly entertaining, and that's a weird thing to say, but like it's effective in making the monsters seem threatening. And because the show hops all over the world, it never really gets stale, like seeing city after city after city get destroyed. Like there's forests, there's deserts. They go to the North and South Pole. They go underground, and they go to various cities and villages, and most of the monsters go on some kind of rampage, and they're all very entertaining. And even Godzilla goes on a couple rampages, like the episode Winter of Our Discontent, where he's mind controlled by Cameron Winter to go on a rampage at a U.S. Army base. And then, of course, the Monster Wars trilogy, watching all of the monsters go on rampages all over the world is a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun city destruction action. And this leads me into my next pro number 9, which is there's a lot of fun monster battles. Of course, with Godzilla being the main big gun / big weapon of the series, Godzilla's the main line of defense for all these various monsters and mutations all over the world. And yeah, the formula of the show is fairly formulaic. The Heat team shows up, does some investigating, discovers the monster. They try to figure out what it is or how to defeat it. And then they work together with Godzilla, who shows up always at the perfect moment and always at the right time to either save Heat or destroy the monster at the very end, or at least defeat it. Rinse, lather, repeat for 40 episodes. Hey, I like that formula. And seeing Godzilla being used as the big gun sometimes can be seen as a problem, and that's something that some people have criticized the 70s Godzilla movies, where Godzilla is literally just used as a big gun, or in a lot of the Showa Gamera movies too, where Gamera is just the big gun. But as long as they do entertaining and cool shit, I don't give a damn. It's simple, but it works. There's a reason why they did it so many times in the Showa series, and there's a reason why this show went on for 40 episodes. It's simple, but it works, and it's entertaining. Yeah, there's a lot of good monster fights. Godzilla uses his speed, his agility, his claws, and his teeth, his backup in the form of the heat seekers, and also his atomic breath in various ways to destroy, defeat, fight monsters, aliens, robots, you name it. He's on the front line, and he's defending his family, and he's defending his territory. It's very entertaining, very enjoyable, well animated, and just cool. Yeah, not much to say, but there's I don't really think I have a favorite monster fight necessarily for this show, but yeah, the monster fights are all no, for the most part, the monster fights are a lot of fun. We'll get to that a little later. If it sounds like I'm blasting through a lot of these, I'm not doing it on purpose. I guess I do, but I also don't have a lot of stuff to say about this. But also, I haven't reviewed an animated show since Neon Genesis Evangelion, so there's that too. But whatever. And my final pro, this is a very strange pro to have, but pro number 10, also like the Showa series, this show has great pseudoscience. And what I mean by that is also like a Showa Ultraman show, there's a lot of science in this show because most of the characters in this show, they either have to do with some field of science or well, no. Really the only one who's not a scientist, quote unquote, or has some kind of high intelligence like field of expertise is Monique. She's just a badass, but she is good with weapons and some technology, learning how to use weapons. But Randy's the tech guy. Nick and Elsie are both biologists in some way. Craven is a robotics biologist and just expert. A lot of these characters are very intelligent. And seeing these characters come together, they examine monsters, they figure out a way to either contain, destroy, or defeat various monsters. And a couple times, too, they have to figure out how to save Godzilla from being defeated by the episode's monster. And you hear a lot of technobabble and scientific terms and scientific techno jargon left and right. Now, for me, how it's utilized in this show, I think it's fascinating. It's very believable and it's very engaging. Watching a group of scientists work together to defeat monsters is I eat it up. They do that a lot in Showa Ultraman shows, and I eat it up there too. It's interesting, it's fascinating, it's well written, it's well paced, and it's not too complicated. Well, I mean, this is a kid's show. If they were to actually like talk about quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and theoretical physicists, stuff like this in the show, it would just go over kids' heads and they'd be bored. But they talk about, one monster is literally a giant mutated bacteria. So they crawl inside Godzilla's body and they're discussing how to, travel through Godzilla's body, look out for his heart and his aortic valves and the brainstem and the nasal membrane that they have to walk through. It is scientific, but it's advanced enough that kids can still know what they're talking about, but they also get a good visual example of what they're talking about. But talking about like mutated bacteria, a mutated sea anemone that goes around and sucks fluids and electrolytes, a giant fungus that kind of does the same thing. a giant cyborg, a giant robot, um, a giant sea bug that feeds on oil and bleeds methane and has pyrokinesis and can create fires. Tachyon emissions that are used in the Leviathan episodes, that are like theoretical particles that can travel faster than light. They talk about those. There's a lot of use of pseudoscience in this show, and it's dumbed down enough that kids and general audiences will understand what they're talking about, but they still talk about enough science stuff that makes the characters believable in their areas of expertise. You know, Nick and Elsie are biologists, and uh, Craven is a robotics expert, a biologist as well, and he's just a scientist. And it's very believable, it's very captivating and engaging, well written, and just entertaining. I know that's a weird pro to have for a show, but I like when pseudoscience is done well. It can be engaging and entertaining. Another scene that it's not from this show, but in the first Avengers movie, when Tony Stark and Bruce Banner are talking about science, it's very captivating watching two very intelligent men like collaborate on various scientific endeavors, and seeing these two get along is very enjoyable and very captivating. So I like that, and that's similar to stuff that happens in here. So with all these great things to say about this great show, do I have any cons? Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I have a couple cons, although a couple of them are um more like nitpicks. So actually, I'll start with the nitpicky ones. Nitpick number one is this show lacks an ending. Now I know that, especially back in in these days, kids shows and a lot of shows in general weren't really made with endings in mind. They would just keep a show going, and if the formula worked, they just kept milking it and milking it and milking it until it got old and people tuned out, and then it gets canceled. Um, Sometimes it can work for a long time, like Bones, which lasted 12 years and 246 episodes, and that's a murder mystery show. Those shows can get very formulaic and stale, but I mean, that worked for 246 episodes. Um, so it's not really necessarily a fault against the show, but the final episode that was aired or made for this show is an episode about a giant frogfish that gets into a fight with Godzilla a couple times underwater and then is just let go and driven back into the depths of the ocean after causing some harm and causing some damage. It's just kind of an underwhelming and lackluster finale for the show. Um, and I think the original ending episode, because that one wasn't aired, the frogfish episode was never aired. It was that one I was telling you about, that one monster that could feed on oil and bleeds methane. That too is a very bare bones generic monster of the week episode, and that was the final episode to actually air, and that too was not a very satisfying finale. So it's a shame that this show, I'm glad it lasted as long as it did, but it's kind of a shame that the show starts high, but it ends kind of on a fizzle. So that's a little disappointing. Nitpick number two, I don't like Cameron Winter. I don't like the idea of having a human villain. Or at least, no, because the MonsterVerse has human villains. And, well, I mean, I don't even like, what's his name? excuse me, Charles Dance's character from Godzilla King of the Monsters. I just don't really have an opinion on him. But I guess he is effective as a villain in setting the monsters loose all over the world. So there is that at least. But I don't like Cameron Winter. I think he is a very unnecessary addition. And a super rich, evil business tycoon that wants to mind control Godzilla using a bunch of cybernetic flies to implant a mind control device. And his reasoning for that is, oh, I'll just mind control Godzilla and people will pay me millions of dollars to not let him attack their property. Then the second one is when he creates a giant chameleon or like a giant mimic of Godzilla. Uh, then he'll be like, oh, I'll just clone a bunch of giant monsters so that I can sell them off to various countries that want to have their own giant monster weapon. Ka-ching! And then the third time that he appears is with the Lizard Slayers, these various giant robots. And he initially wants to kill both he and Godzilla, but then I think he was like, oh, wait, no. All the footage was recorded of the Lizard Slayers working so well against Godzilla. So now other countries will ask me, hey, can we buy a couple of those? Ka-ching! He's such a boring, bland, evil business tycoon that just wants to come up with various plans involving the monsters to make himself from a multi-billionaire into a multi-trillionaire. It's very bland, very basic, very boring, and uninteresting. He sticks out like a sore thumb whenever he shows up in the show and is just very uninteresting. He and Walter Simmons probably would get along pretty well. Although, unlike Walter Simmons, who gets a satisfying death, Winter does not. He kind of does get away scot-free every time that he is introduced in the show, even though he steals delicate information, puts many lives in danger, unleashes giant monsters and giant robots that cause millions of dollars in property damage, and he tries to kill several people, including members of the United States military, several times, and he somehow always gets away scot-free. Lame. I don't like Winter. Cameron Winter is a big no-no for me. So, actually, no, that's a full-blown con. So that was con number 1, but nitpick number 2. So I have 2 nitpicks and 4 cons. So nitpick number 2 is that there are some lame monsters that show up. Now I know, like, not every monster is going to work for everybody, and not everybody is going to like or dislike the same monsters. But and really there's not that many that I think in this show that are kind of lame, but well, that pyrokinetic methane bleeding monster I thought was kind of lame, as do I think the large giant rats from Cat and Mouse. I do think those are kind of lame. The Loch Ness Monster that appears in the episode Deadlock, he heads for Scotland after Dr. Hugh Trevor, voiced by Roddy McDowall, of all people, in his last role before his death, of the Pisces Marine Research Institute, claims his facility was attacked by the Loch Ness Monster. Once Nick is convinced of Nessie's existence, he discovers that the facility is hiding a terrible secret. Trevor has captured Nessie's baby and plans to sell it on the black market. Now the team must convince Godzilla to work with Nessie if they are going to save her young and ensure her safety in Loch Ness. It's not a bad episode. I just don't like the design for Nessie. Nessie is a giant sea serpent monster with no other abilities other than constricting and coiling around Godzilla and swimming underwater. Like, whoop-de-doo. The ice borers, I love the episode Freeze and how they're done and executed as a threat is effective, but I don't much care for the ice borers themselves. They have kind of crappy fights with Godzilla. More on that a little later. The giant water beetle in the episode Cash of the Titans is kind of lame. Skeetera is kind of a dumb, stupid. I mean, I guess it maybe is like an homage to something that would have been done in the Showa Godzilla series, but it's just a little stupid. And with how hard Godzilla and Heat have to work to take out Skeetera over the course of the episode is a little hard to swallow. You'd be like, this is no different than the giant queen bee. How is Godzilla having such a hard time killing this thing? Um Oh, Firefly, that's what it was called. The Firefly, the pyrokinetic bug thing that can bleed methane. Oh, and the Deep Dweller, a huge mutant frogfish that doesn't have any abilities and doesn't leave any impact. So yeah, there's a couple crappy monster designs and a couple lame filler monsters throughout the series. Not necessarily a huge problem, but yeah, not all the monsters are winners. So I already talked about the lame human villain, so that's con number one. Con number two is that with those lame monsters, that does lead to some crappy monster fights. Um, Sometimes the monster fights are over and done with in the snap of a finger, which is another thing that's very similar to a Showa Ultraman show. Sometimes Ultraman just has to show up, fire his Specium beam, and then kaboom, end of the episode. Or this will lead me into con number three is that Godzilla gets his ass kicked a bit too much for my taste. Now, Godzilla does kick a lot of ass, and when he's pulling out all the stops and fucking up monsters and aliens left and right, he is a lot of fun to watch. But especially towards the end of the show, the last 10 episodes or so, Godzilla gets his ass kicked a bit too much for my taste. Kind of reminds me of Gamera, and the structure of a lot of episodes does feel a lot like a Showa Gamera movie, where in those movies, Gamera would show up, have a brief fight with the monster, then Gamera would be subdued for a little while, and the monster would continue its rampage, and then Gamera would recover and then show up and finish off the monster. That's actually exactly how some episodes in this show are structured. Just replace Gamera with Godzilla, um, and it's kind of lame sometimes in the Showa Gamera series, and sometimes for the same reason, it's as lame in this show too. Like the episode, excuse me, Leviathan, Godzilla's um presence in that episode actually is very forced and probably could have worked better if he just wasn't in it at all. Because all he's there to do is briefly fight off the Leviathan's guard dog monster, a giant Cryptocleidos. It's like a giant plesiosaur looking type monster. And we see him fight it for maybe 30 seconds 2 times. And then the rest of the use that they have for Godzilla is to just use him as a Deus Ex Machina to save the Heat Seekers. That's literally it. There's another episode. I love this episode, DOA, Dead on Arrival, but Godzilla's fights with the giant worm, El Gusano, are kind of lame. It's just a few shots of Godzilla like dodging and just moving around and lightly pawing and pushing at the giant worm. It's just kind of lame and stupid. Kind of like some of the monster, or kind of like the monster fights in Gamera 3 Revenge of Iris. Funny, another Gamera connection. His fights with the giant rats in Cat and Mouse also suck. The rats are like this big compared to Godzilla, who's this big. Even if there's several rats, the fights are just kind of lame. It'd be so easy if Godzilla would just pick them up and bite them in half, but this is a kid's show. They're not going to show that. Excuse me. Godzilla's fights with the frogfish, the deep dweller, are also kind of lame. Somehow this giant fish is able to outswim Godzilla. And when Godzilla's underwater, he can't properly use his atomic breath. He'll fire it out, but then it'll just turn to steam underwater. So that's kind of lame. Godzilla's fights with the Firefly are kind of lame. Although it's nice to see Godzilla use a little bit of ingenuity. Like when the Firefly first shows up in the middle of the ocean, and to defeat it, Godzilla just uses his tail to splash a huge wave of water onto the Firefly to snuff out the flames that it puts out. So that's cool, but still the fights are just kind of lame. Let's see. Godzilla's fights with the lizard slayers are kind of lame in my opinion, because they're trying to hold Godzilla back because they don't want Godzilla to actually hurt humans, even if they are the bad guys. So those are kind of lame. Excuse me. But yeah, some of the monster fights are kind of lame and both really short, anticlimactic, and just kind of boring and stupid. And yeah, Godzilla does get his ass kicked a bit too much. For my taste, it's very reminiscent of Gamera, funny enough. And con number 4, my last con, there are some shots where the animation does look a little crappy. 2 scenes in particular from 2 different episodes that stick out to me. In the episode Dead on Arrival, there's a scene where the characters come across a big tunnel that the worm had just dug, and they pick up this species of flower, and it's not even an animation cell for that scene when I think it's Nick or Elsie who's holding up some of these flowers. They just used an image of the storyboards for that episode for that scene in the episode. They didn't make an animation cell. They just took a photo of the storyboard and plastered it into the episode there. And they do pretty much the same thing in the episode website when they're looking at some of the giant spiders that they're investigating in the show. And it really sticks out like a sore thumb. And sometimes the animation, it does look a little stiff, and it does look a bit incomplete. But yeah, those storyboard shots were probably the worst. Again, I'm not an animation expert, but there are some shots in the show where the animation is a bit stiff and janky. But excuse me. I guess that's all I have to say about Godzilla the Animated Series. I had a little less to say about this than I thought, although a lot of this was spent up with me talking about the episodes. So my final thoughts on Godzilla the Animated Series. I'm a big fan of this show. As I stated, this is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Despite its flaws, despite its lack of a conclusion, um, I really dig this show. This is hands down the most underrated and underappreciated installment of the entire Godzilla franchise. And of all of the animated Godzilla projects that have come out, it's easily the best and the most enjoyable. The Godzilla Power Hour is like kind of so bad it's good. Like it's campy and enjoyable for what it is, but there's definitely better. The Netflix Godzilla Earth trilogy are all terrible, and while I still haven't seen Godzilla Singular Point, I already know that I just would not like it. Like, it's just really not for me. So, of all the animated Godzilla projects that have been made, this is definitely the best, and this is the one that I recommend the most. If you just want classic Godzilla monster versus monster action, Godzilla being a good guy and defending the world from various monsters and aliens, this is right up your alley. So despite how much I love it, I'm not gonna give this show a perfect 10, unfortunately, because some of the animation's kind of crappy. There are some crappy monsters. I really dislike Cameron Winter. So I'm not gonna be able to give this a perfect 10. So I'm going to give it the closest thing possible. And I give Godzilla the Animated Series a really solid 9.5 out of 10. If you're a hater of the 1998 movie, I still would recommend you check this show out. It's a good continuation of it. It actually redeems Godzilla as a worthy member of the King of the Monsters. It does deliver a lot more of classic Toho kaiju goodness that the 98 movie robbed us of seeing. And just overall, if you still haven't seen this series, Ghost. If you're a big Godzilla fan and you still haven't seen this show, I highly recommend you track it down. It's also still, last I checked, it's very inexpensive. I bought this for $15 when it first debuted back in 2014, and nowadays I think it still goes for like 10 or 12 bucks. All 40 episodes on 4 different discs. You really can't go wrong. So yeah, I highly recommend Godzilla the Animated Series. That was a lot. So that'll about do it for this review. Sorry for the interruptions and sorry for the delay. Look forward to next time as I tackle a trilogy of monster movies that it turns out I really, really just kind of didn't want to talk about. But gotta do it anyway. When next time on Super Kaiju Binge, I will be reviewing the much-maligned Rebirth of Mothra trilogy. Look forward to that. And as always, go out and if you're a member of a certain crew that has a giant monster somehow as its big gun, and you see a bunch of weird looking monsters like a giant sea anemone, a giant fungus, a giant frogfish, and a species of aliens that have telepathic abilities coming at you, I would say run, but you're supposed to protect us from them, so maybe not. And I will see you guys in the next video.